My name's Aimee Baker. I am with JLL for the last 14 years and I head up our project and development services team here in New Zealand, and I also lead our sustainability consulting team across Asia Pacific. All right then, so welcome to the podcast today. I suppose just first saying I am not the expert. I am not a seismologist, but I'm very much leaning into what I'm hoping to be a pretty interesting conversation today with two fabulous guests who are giving up their time for us. So I'm approaching this conversation really, you can tell I'm not from New Zealand, so an expat, fellow expat, Fabio, who moved to New Zealand about 3 years ago now, and really had that sort of first-hand experience about what is the seismic building code, how confusing is it, how ambiguous is it, and also how onerous those policies really are. So we've had a number of recent changes that have been announced to us, and I think we're sort of all sensing a lot of positivity in the real estate sector, that maybe we might have some stability, we might have some certainty, there might be a little bit more common sense around the approach. But of course, no one wants to negotiate around life safety. So today's discussion, we're bringing together a couple of different perspectives. This discussion is going to be pretty vibrant. We're not going to get too technical, but we'll get a little bit technical. And of course, there's a lot that we still don't yet understand as the sort of first announcement now goes into a consultation process, with the bill hopefully being passed before the next election. What are the initial reactions from an investor and a property owner and manager perspective, and also from our engineering community? So Fabio Pagano joins us here with over 15 years of property experience in New Zealand and Australia. And he's the general manager of property at Oyster Property, where he leads the strategic direction and management of the entire commercial property portfolio. And I got this from your website. That's 1.8 billion of assets under management, 33 properties, and over 364 tenants. So a lot of different stakeholders there that you're obviously managing, given these announcements. And Matt Bishop, the founder and managing director of Brevity, an engineering firm specialising in seismic design and compliance, with a career spanning over 2 decades in construction and at the forefront of engineering innovation here in New Zealand. So let's get right into it. Yeah. So I suppose our audiences across New Zealand and Australia tuning into the podcast, maybe we could just start thinking about, what were the core problems with the old NBS rating system? Why has this seismic risk review taken place, and why did the government embark on this? So Matt, any initial thoughts on that?
To ground it right back, the existing Earthquake-Prone Buildings Act comes from the results of the Christchurch earthquake sequence.
Right.
So real buildings falling down and hurting people. And as a response to that, the government developed the Earthquake-Prone Buildings Act.
Yeah.
And after that, we went to work making an awful lot of engineering documents to define what was in the Act and to define, among other things, what percentage NBS was, percentage new building standard. Essentially, how close is this building that we're looking at to the new building standard, and giving it a percentage based on that. And got to work doing that for almost 15 years, and found that there's quite a few repercussions. There's a complicated engineering process and an even more complicated consenting and construction process coming off the back of that.
Yeah. It really felt like, I think, earthquakes are sort of low probability, high impact events. And, you can sort of sympathise that really the system was brought in, yes, in a knee-jerk way, but in a way that it was necessary to do so because it was such a devastating sort of series of events. But then the easiest and the quickest way to do that was to bring in a blanket approach, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, we did what we could with what we had. We kind of made it up on the go.
Mm.
And this time round, we are looking at what has worked around the world,
Yeah,
what's worked
great.
internationally, and bringing a lot of that back
Yeah.
into what is now a considerably more targeted approach.
Yeah, that's excellent. And so in your view then, that sort of rating a building in Auckland the same as rating a building in Wellington over the past, say, 15 years under the old regime, does it feel interesting for you?
It's different. I suppose the process we go through to design a new building is very robust and detailed, and make sure that every single component in that building is built to code. To look at what happens in an earthquake, there's only a select few bits and pieces, a few different modes that really cause life safety issues.
Got you.
And the difference between those two is quite profound.
Yeah.
And for the government to look at life safety as the core outcome of the Act means they could cut off a lot of that engineering process.
Right.
To focus on what was actually going to hurt people.
Yeah, so a much more targeted approach, like you say. And I mean, I think I've heard a few times that it's interesting when you have a percentage, right? And I think that everybody's quite grateful to move away from that percentage, because for anybody who's not, an engineer and who's trying to understand what that percentage means, the percentage almost overstates the precision of what the rating is.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
It's an odd one. And why would anybody not want to have 100%? It's kind of easy just to go, well, I want 100%.
Yeah. And different engineers with different methods coming to different determinations of percentage NBS, and that's caused all sorts of issues, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always been this notion of just the percentage is the number you have to hit, and then a different engineer has a different view, and you could have three engineers look at exactly the same building and have three completely different results. I think that's where from an occupier's perspective and a landlord's perspective, is that you've had to do engineering, detailed seismic assessments. We've had to do peer review on peer review.
Yes.
And it's varying. Like, how can it be so vastly different?
Yes.
It makes it very hard for us to understand what we need to be doing.
Yes. So scrapping that then feels like that will take away some of that ambiguity.
Absolutely.
And might take away as well just the way that we approach those engineering assessments in the future. So we've got a sort of fairer risk-based approach. We don't know all the details yet, but there's been a few things published under the announcements in terms of which buildings in which locations would be classified as having a higher risk rating and therefore remain on that earthquake-prone building register and need to be remediated. So we hear a lot about sort of unreinforced masonry buildings. We're going to try and not use acronyms, but a lot of people are URMs. And that for me, the beloved British brick buildings that we see, that's basically what we're talking about, right? And so do you think that, I guess, Fabio, have you got any of those sorts of buildings within your portfolio that you're now sort of...
We are. I think it is very, very new announcement, and it is in a lot of areas, especially in Auckland. It is a substantial variance to what we've all been focused on for such a long time from our ratings and an MBS rating and system. So, are we taking stock of everything on all our assets? Absolutely. Yes. Are we reconsidering what might be the life safety perspective of these assets and the risk assessment around that? We have started that journey already.
Yes.
Even though we don't know all the details yet. So, and there's still a long way to go to find those details. But our view is it's a positive for the industry, absolutely. Mm-hmm. It takes away some of the ambiguity we've had before in terms of undertaking works in areas where, like Auckland, doing seismic upgrades on buildings worth millions and millions of dollars without no material change whatsoever. In some cases, and because we've had so many varying degrees of information from engineers in terms of detailed seismic assessments, it can feel very academic rather than the reality of the situation where it's actually really low risk.
Yes.
From a life safety, both in an occupier's perspective and also from an external point of view, because I think there is what I'm learning, and as I read more and understand more about the legislation, is as much about life safety internally, but actually a lot more about external, the public side of it. Hence,
That's right.
the changes in what some of those regional areas might be from a seismic perspective in terms of a facade falling down. So yes, we will look at those. We've got concrete facades, we've got traditional facades, we've got glass facades, but actually we'll look at all of those in due course.
Yeah. The announcement has suggested that it is going to take 3,000 buildings off the government's earthquake-prone buildings register. So that is quite a major change. And just for confirmation, that means Auckland, Northland and the Chatham Islands. I can't imagine you have a property over there.
No, we don't.
But, a win for the Chatham Islands. That is no longer under the Act at all. So 3,000 buildings off, and actually that it's going to be far cheaper for sort of 1,500 more buildings to be remediated. So it feels like the review's been focused a little bit around sort of saving building owners money, but do you think that's quite a good thing in a way, because there's been so much inertia in terms of being able to invest in buildings? Does it now give you more of a sense of clarity around where to invest rather than just that blanket approach and a wall of capital that's needed across the portfolio?
Absolutely. We do believe that will there be capital to spend in some cases? I think so. However, the extent of it will be significantly diminished, and where historically you may have to, generally driven from a tenant demand of an occupation to meet a number, a percentage threshold, and you do those works where actually has no material change. And especially in our environment, where a lot of the money we are spending are mum and dad investors. So we are investing their money to upgrade an asset that has no material change.
Doesn't have an impact on the value of
Nothing.
the building?
No.
No.
Not generally.
No.
Like if I go and spend a $30 million building and I spend
You wouldn't notice.
$30 million, you wouldn't
Other
notice
than
it.
some bars here or there.
You won't
or-
actually see it.
Makes it more ugly.
Exactly. Well, hopefully not.
No, hopefully not.
But you won't see that, and wouldn't necessarily have a tangible impact on valuation.
No.
Not like doing a lease or other facade upgrades or anything else you might want to spend your money in. So actually that capital can be better deployed for the asset to drive a better return for those mum and dad investors and everyone else. And also I think the nature of the fact that you can have historically and even up to very recently multiple assessments on a single asset in varying degrees has probably stifled some investment across the board.
Yeah.
And the fact that even me personally, being here in 6 or 7 years, I've seen so many changes in the way we assess buildings. For someone from Australia who had no idea about earthquakes whatsoever, I've had to learn a lot.
Yeah.
But we've now had so many changes on it. But the risk was, if I buy it, will the rules change again? Will they change next year? If the government changes, will it change again?
Yeah, hard to predict.
Exactly. And so that risk around seismic challenges has my view and probably our view as well, has stifled a lot of investment historically.
Yeah, interesting.
Especially from non-New Zealand-based investors.
Yes.
So offshore you go, well, if the rules change again or the government changes, where am I sitting? And what will it be?
It's the lack of trust, I suppose,
could it be yesterday when I looked at that building, it was 87% as an MBS, what it was.
Yeah.
But actually you change the rules, now it's 34.
That's right.
I've in my career in New Zealand, I have seen buildings that were 100% MBS and literally months later at 34.
Goalposts have changed,
exactly
downgrade the building. Yeah, I think that's interesting, isn't it? And I suppose, with Auckland being taken off that, out of the regime, it's going to take a bit of time to trickle down, because a lot of what the value of your buildings is driven by tenant demand. So I think that's the interesting bit is, will tenants start to shift their priorities? Will they feel comfortable enough to no longer require a building to meet a certain seismic standard? And how can they appease their stakeholders, particularly some of those larger corporates that have dealings offshore? Talking about JLL, we're headquartered out of the US. They wouldn't, would we ever think to put our people in a building that wasn't seismically sufficient? And just because it's changed overnight, does it mean, risk's gone? Overnight. Okay. Happy. Well, then people will rush to all sorts of different buildings, but I don't know how long it's going to take.
I think that's probably the biggest challenge we see from our demand. Our 384 tenants, of which over 17% of our tenant occupiers are government or Crown agencies. Now, they are probably the strictest, including some multinationals in terms of requirements for seismic rules. However, that change will take time. I think that will change as we see the detail of the legislation, whatever the timing will be, how it's going to be implemented. That's going to be a journey. And I think we have started that discussion already with a number of our tenants, but that journey will be around how do we really look at what life safety is, right? And so we've all done probably life safety assessments in our past for tenants, and because there might be a seismic MBS rating might be lower, but actually it's a low risk to life safety.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think there's a bit of a journey to go on that yet.
Yeah.
And I think it'll take probably longer than we anticipate, because most people have had 10 years to get themselves head around, or longer, 15 years to get their head around what MBS really means and the seismic status and what the risk profile for my occupiers are. And as you rightly say, none of us want to have any of our people at risk.
No.
And we don't want any of our tenants at risk at all. However, actually making the assessment around life safety is a bit of a journey we need to take yet.
The government, in this proposal, they're making that point evident in the sense that the earthquake-prone buildings is a specific targeted life safety proposal for what they see as being the most hazardous spaces on the most vulnerable buildings with the most consequence, and then leaving the market to decide on all of those other things.
Right.
So at the moment, we've got this continuum of percentage NBS all the way through from less than 34 to 110, 120. I've seen that before too. To a binary approach where something is or isn't earthquake prone.
Yes.
And what we haven't been able to do up to this date with the tenant arguments, the tenant discussions, is talk about other things like the difference between a supermarket and the interiors of that and the life safety risks of that compared to an office. It's all been lumped into the same thing, but when you consider those two different tenancies, you could come up with different ways to look at minimizing the risks, or what sort of buildings suit different people.
And the occupiers. That you talk about supermarkets. Past life outside of Oyster, we had a lot of supermarkets, and we did a lot of work with seismically, all our tenants being Woolworths, to look at the life safety of big air conditioning units sitting in the roof and making sure they were stable in the event of a building shake from an earthquake perspective, because that is life safety. Because if that falls and you've got a building that is highly occupied, a supermarket, not your office building, that's different. I fully appreciate those elements may still be life safety. Absolutely. And that's the binary discussions that we've had very, very rarely. And it's more that practical approach has been rare. And it's that binary discussion outside of the framework that has been there before. It has been very much, it's either you're at 87% or you're at 34%, or you're at 34%.
Yeah.
But my lowest, weakest point might be a staircase in the external frame at 33.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, the whole entire building is 33, even though it's actually about making sure my bracket on a staircase.
Right.
That's the challenge I've seen. It's that one element, and it's the lowest common denominator. Rather than
fix that. Actually, focus your money where. And I think because it's had to upgrade the whole building, the amount of that spend is huge.
Absolutely.
Right? And sometimes it's more than what the building's worth in the first place.
Absolutely. I've seen that too. I've seen it nearly double the value of an asset.
Yeah, interesting.
Which is just economically unaffordable for anybody.
Of course.
Because you'll never, ever get the return. Because it's not like I can charge my tenants 3 times as much.
No. We have to think of buildings as exactly that, assets, right?
Yes.
That's there for a reason.
On the way through there, it's worth mentioning that your seismic updates then pulled in fire updates and access updates and things like that as well.
Absolutely.
So it was cost on top of cost.
Yeah, it sort of felt like a smart thing to do, didn't it? Like, as the government, well, I really want my landlords and my building owners to comply. I just want to force compliance. So, okay, well, I'll just bring that in as an added component of the legislation.
It was unintended consequence. So the central government said, let's do the earthquake thing. local government, the council said, okay, but that's a consent, so therefore
Oh,
it triggers
of
these
course.
other requirements.
Yes, of
Exactly.
course.
It wasn't exactly expected.
And so we're
it
expecting
happened.
that will be completely
gone.
decoupled.
yeah.
That's completely gone. So
And
that's
it's very, very clear in the current documentation that I've read that says if you need to do earthquake elements, you do those only.
yes,
From an
yes,
earthquake prone perspective too.
yes.
Yeah.
That's the focus. You're not
Yeah.
kind of, let's go and upgrade the fire system that's 30 years old or
Yeah.
other things like that. And I've experienced that where the cost of those additional elements from a local authority consenting body, and they were right in doing so, are more expensive than the actual
Than the
seismic work in the
original.
first place.
Yeah.
And you can't sort of plan those. I think that the original act was brought in to effect change within a small amount of time, so that if there was another earthquake, that we'd at least done something to reduce
Yeah.
the risk. But what has actually backfired in a way,
That's it. Yep.
because and I think that's why the review has come in, is that really it's gone the other way,
Yeah.
and it's actually meant that capital hasn't, and the upgrades haven't taken place.
When we got briefed on it the other day, MB did a brief to the Engineering NZ engineers, and they talked about a curve essentially,
Yeah.
where a limited amount of requirements would have got high compliance. And then the more requirements they put in place, the harder it is to comply,
Yes.
and the less people do it,
Yes. Exactly.
and the longer it takes to get things done. So they're
Exactly.
looking back and
Yeah.
going, okay, we're not getting the effects that we expected.
Exactly.
It's costing
Yeah.
too much. It's taking too
We
long.
haven't taken the risk factors
Mm.
any
We haven't
lower.
We haven't got what we expected to happen.
That's
yet.
right. Yeah. Yeah. And there was some interesting debate at an event that I went to recently about actually what presides will be that Health and Safety at Work Act. And so, as a building owner, I think there's all sorts of, there's a whole balance of risks that you have to look at when you own a building or occupy a building. And so how the two interact in terms of the new Seismic Building Code and the Health and Safety at Work Act, which one takes precedence, because you're still talking about life safety. And so I'm not going to go into too much of that detail because it sounds very complicated, but I can see that there needs to be, quite a balanced view taken across that.
Yeah, that will be interesting. When they were developing the Act the first time round, there was discussion with WorkSafe, and I don't know if they put it in legislation, but their guideline was that they wouldn't include earthquake harm under the Health and
Right.
Safety Act, to leave the earthquake-prone building stuff.
Separate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
to
they
itself. Right.
Mhm. Whether they hold to that once they've pared the earthquake-prone building down would be
Yeah.
another thing to
Yeah.
investigate.
Yeah.
I think that when you start to look at a property in, say, in Auckland from a risk perspective, like there might be an earthquake risk assessment we might undertake. We'll have to do it for tenants, but we still do it from a health and safety perspective all the time.
Yeah.
We've got people that walk in and out. It's fixing the concrete and the tiles. It's
Cool.
fixing potholes. It's
Yes.
making sure things work and making sure window
Yeah.
cracks are fixed and there's no leaks and roofs. Like, as good property managers, we do all those things on a regular basis from a health and safety perspective regardless.
Yeah.
What we're now doing is including kind of the risk associated with the building in terms of people's ability to exit, or the facade having an impact on the public, being people outside, as part of our assessment.
Yeah.
And hopefully we will get to a point where that is all encompassing in one review, ideally, so
Yes.
that it's all around the risk.
Yeah.
Because I can have someone fall over or trip on a hazard on a footpath, which I don't want to happen either,
Yeah.
let alone a concrete facade falling down.
That's right. I think when I first moved here, it was I'd come out of London, and we were very much focused, and I'm very passionate about sort of upgrading buildings from a sustainability performance perspective. And so it was quite different to have conversations with landlords in New Zealand, where they were faced with so many costly upgrades from a seismic perspective, that to advocate for spending on making a building more efficient, making it less of a consumer, it felt like a really hard ask. And I think we're also thinking here, we're seeing lots of very catastrophic weather events. I arrived a week before Gabrielle, so that was quite interesting. And obviously we're at the moment, our thoughts go out to residents in in Jamaica, where the biggest storm ever recorded is about to hit. So I think hopefully, do you think this is going to allow building owners to look forward a little bit more with a bit more certainty and plan for other risks that might impact buildings, both buildings' value, but also the life safety and the resilience of that asset?
I think so. I think you're absolutely right in terms of, as building owners, we've had to focus so much on the seismic side of it because it becomes mandatory from a tenant expectation point of view. So here's my lease, I will occupy it for 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be, but I need to make sure that your seismic assessment is at this level.
So it's actually written into the
lease.
And
into the leases. A lot of times it is. And historically, in my experience, we always wanted to put a line in the sand. So as the point in time when we're signing the document, the legislation says X. Because we all assumed a lot that the legislation will just keep on ratcheting up. And so we didn't want to have open-ended environments.
Right.
If it was open-ended and just at any point in time, other than an event like a force majeure or a storm or something like that, then you might be okay now because the legislation will change. If you want to push it down to next year, then you might be okay in terms of upgrades. But most of us would. That's too open-ended is too big a risk.
And the forecast would only get
how long's a piece of string
and
how much is it going to cost? And
Yeah.
so actually we all put a line in the sand.
Right.
And that now is a challenge because we are legally obligated under a lease to undertake those. So that's where the earlier conversation around tenant occupation, that's the next piece of our exercise is to understand that obligation with tenants, their ability to understand the legislation and change.
Yes.
And actually convincing and most people that actually yesterday there was a deemed risk, today there's no risk.
Yeah.
And how do you convince somebody of that?
Gee, that highlights quite well the issue. I've built a whole business as a consulting engineer around the premise that the government will just keep adding more requirements to acts and laws and regulations.
Yeah.
And for an asset owner, the strategy is to delay as much as you can.
It has been, yeah.
But now with it going back the other way, that strategy reverses.
Absolutely. But actually, I don't think you'd find a building owner out there that doesn't want to have life safety at the core of what they do. We have PCBU, health and safety obligations in those things, so we all do it.
Yeah.
And that's why we are fully supportive of this change because I think it's doing the right thing in the absence of doing what has felt like quite academic in an environment for a past. And the challenge is it has been about cost.
Yeah.
And so therefore other things like sustainability or reducing the carbon footprint in a building, putting on solar panels or doing anything else to reduce the occupation costs of those assets has been probably put on the back burner a little bit.
Yeah, interesting.
Unless you're a big corporate.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
So I thought we might just change direction a little bit and we've talked about leases, lease structures. The other major thing that we talk a lot about here in New Zealand is insurance. Our insurance costs are astronomical. And of course, now with this new regime, do you think that, maybe you're having conversations with your insurers at the moment, Fabio, but is it something that they will look favourably upon? Do you think the premiums will go down? Does it change anything at all, or is it too early to say?
Honestly, we've had some very initial conversations with our market. However, I think it's really too early to say at this moment. While MBS seismic ratings on all our portfolios as we insure the entire lot is important for our brokerage, and both from a New Zealand perspective and offshore. So we have both London-based, Singapore and New Zealand-based insurance.
Yeah.
And there is a need for that, driven prominently around the expectation of that if it's a certain percentage, then it's better than something that's lower. However, I honestly don't, my view at the moment is that it's probably not going to materially change a lot of the insurance at this stage. I think it may have a potential impact where it is earthquake prone in a market. It may be more expensive.
Yeah, okay.
Insurance and lending is another issue, I think, in both, because lenders both also want to have an MBS rating, or what is that?
Take a view on risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And I think like the percentage NBS, it was never about the likelihood of the building being damaged. It was always focused around life safety, is my understanding.
NBS did both because it was to the standard. It essentially it actually started from the building side of things, the building asset. And if the building doesn't fall down, the people will be protected. It was kind of like that approach.
Right.
So the asset and the life safety were integrated in that approach. The new approach is looking for mostly protecting public safety.
Yep.
And for an unreinforced masonry building, which only needs facade protection, so you secure the facade, the whole rest of the building could fall down.
Yeah, of course.
But the people walking along the sidewalk are safe.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's that separation now between the two.
Yeah.
And it's very likely that the insurers will ask for more, but the opportunity is that at the moment it's a calculated based approach on every building.
Yes.
From the ground up, nuts and bolts, literally, to figure out your percentage NBS.
Yeah.
And there's opportunity to develop new techniques.
Yes.
And some of those exist overseas, which are more statistical.
Okay.
How likely is this type of building to fall down? What do we need to do? Things like that. And they can be quicker, faster, cheaper than the engineering-based approach. So, it's good.
Yeah.
There's room there for engineers to innovate too.
To innovate, be less restricted and really focus on the parts that need to be solutioned within a building.
Instead of being told what to do by the government, we can talk to the insurers and see what they're worried about and develop processes specific to what they want.
Yeah. And it does change from insurance. Like I've had conversations over the few years where it's all about batteries and EVs.
Yeah.
Right? Or it's all about the ACM panels on the facade of a building after Grenfell fires.
Yeah.
So there are moments in time where the industry, and I'm not expert in insurance at all by any means, but it's those moments in time of an event that causes the greatest level of concern. And I haven't had MBS or seismic as the number one issue to date.
No.
Right? While they have the reports and everything else, that's it.
Yeah.
So
it was interesting, again, at this event that I went to. I won't mention who put it on because it's obviously going to be a competitor of yours, but it was quite interesting because the way that insurers work is it's very much on an annual basis. So really, if there's nothing happens to a building within a year, happy days. I've banked the money. I don't have to pay out. All good. I've made more and more money. And I think that because the likelihood of these events, they don't happen. It's been 15 years since Canterbury. And so, the likelihood of that happening on an annual basis, you're right. There's other things that are more risky within a building, right? That's going to pose a risk. So my feeling is it's not going to have a huge impact, but none of us are experts. We're here to speculate.
Exactly, but it's really rare from, I think, most people's experience of insurance going down. Right?
Absolutely.
There has been moments in time because of generally capital deployment globally, but rarely does it go down. So I can't see it having a massive material impact.
No. And I mean, if we think
I'd
about...
like it to. We all would love it to, absolutely.
Yeah.
But...
Yes. And I think that the likelihood of a climate event happening, I have a friend that works in reinsurance brokerage of natural disasters.
Yeah, wow.
What a niche. But for her, hurricanes, tornadoes, severe flooding, severe fires, are they more likely? Are we hearing more about those in the news than we are about earthquakes?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
We are. All sorts of things. We've experienced them all here before, more recently than we ever have before. So flood mapping is changing in Auckland because of the flooding zones. We've got massive buyouts of suburbs because of the way how they've reacted in those massive flooding events. We've always historically looked at 1 in 100 year events. Now it's like 1 in 50, perhaps.
Yeah.
So that goes to sustainability as a broad measure, and how do we meet those obligations beyond just seismic, because we've been so focused on that.
So focused,
And I think
really...
to Matt's point around looking at the likelihood of something is where the industry will change, and that goes to both the tenant side and the engineering community. So what is the statistical approach to something, and what will happen in this? And that's something that I think is great, that tools get developed, they're faster and they're more there. So in an event, you can react faster to it.
Yeah.
And also, I think those tools from the engineering community is what we will need for tenants, for them to understand actually what's the chances of something happening. And that's that risk assessment that it will get through as detail and industry comes through over the next
Yeah.
Hopefully 6 months, 12 months.
That'll be fun. There's a crossover there in some of these building elements too. The Geoscience Australia, they do a study on parapets and facades for earthquake loads, but they also do a study on parapets and facades for wind loads. Similar effects. A cyclone can push over a parapet just the same as an earthquake can. So maybe that's an interesting focus area because you're two birds with one stone then.
That's
Absolutely.
right. Yeah.
Well, I've replaced car park lighting in a supermarket before in Wellington because it wasn't originally designed for the wind load. Because there was a standard across their portfolio, but where it was sitting on a hill caused a light pole to fall down.
Yes.
Because it wasn't designed and embedded far enough to meet those loads. And that's nothing to do with seismic or anything else. That's purely meeting the demand of that community in that area.
Yeah. We can't underestimate the sort of devastating impact that earthquakes can have. And I think because it's so widespread and it can be so catastrophic, it's less, with a weather event, it tends to not be quite as widespread, but, it can certainly happen. Interesting. So maybe we could just wrap up a little bit here for our audience. The engineering community has often been criticised as being overly risk averse, maybe over engineering solutions. Of course, no engineer wants to be held responsible for something if in the event that there is an earthquake. So I can completely sympathise. What do you think is going to happen in your community given the changes? And where do you think this is, how's it going to change the approach?
From the feedback I'm seeing already, the first stage is going to be denial, and there will be a lot of discussion.
Okay.
Around,
We're going through the 5 stages of grief, are
pretty
we?
much.
Yeah.
Yep. And what about all the things that we're not covering? What about hollow core floors? What about stairs? What about all these things? They're still there. And then once we come to terms and accept that this is the new way, there's new things to learn as well. One of the keys for 3+ story heavy buildings is what they're calling high risk deficiencies, which we know as HRDs. So there you go. There's another one. And there'll be things like torsional weakness or column connections or things like that. And we need to get used to being able to identify high-risk deficiencies, which is a whole other set of stuff that we can get buried into.
Yes, of course.
So we've still got work to do.
Yeah.
So we'll be okay.
Another podcast brewing.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so in effect, it's a real learning process then that the community will need to go through, and there'll be lots of training presumably being rolled out. And
I mean, we should see the new proposals, the new acts come through early next year.
Yes.
For public comment.
Yes. Okay.
And then development, and we've still got until I think mid-2027 before we see this actually roll out. So there's a lot of time yet to discuss the details.
We do have an election next year.
That's right.
I think there might be, there's always those things on the horizon. So for you, what do you think your advice would be for anybody else sitting in your shoes, owning one property, owning multiple properties? Where do you start? Where's your initial focus going to?
I think, well, firstly, we believe this is a positive from an owner's perspective across the board. Hopefully, it will simplify the way we approach this from everyone's perspective. Like Matt, I do think there's a bit of a journey we have to go on to understand the detail. My advice, like we are, is heed the changes that are coming. Look for opportunities where you can, ideally, without creating any additional risk for anybody, because nobody wants that, is to defer activities until we know more. It'd be remiss of us from a property managers, for us on behalf of our investors, to go off and keep on running down a path that perhaps will substantially change in 6 months, 12 months' time. So if there's an opportunity to actually pause without creating undue risk, which is what we will do, and review your portfolio, review your assets, even with the limited knowledge we have. And then as the information comes out, we get more detail. Talk to your engineers. We've spoken to a lot of our engineers already, and they are already thinking about different ways to approach it already, because they have to, because their industry is changing in front of them. And so have those conversations and be transparent with your tenants as much as possible, and actually just avoid a scenario where you could do some work and finish it the day before legislation comes out.
Yeah. Did you have any examples of that where you'd done some strengthening recently?
No, but there are ones that are in our pipeline that we are actively looking at avoiding scenarios where that would happen.
Yeah.
So I think that's not a good use of people's time. And it is, especially in Auckland, where we know it's substantially changing.
Yep.
And that's the environment we want to make sure that we protect the assets, still protect our people and occupiers and our tenants, but we have a journey to take a little bit more. So
yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for sparing your time today. But like you say, really positive, and, a good step forward, I think, in the right direction. And then the time will tell through the consultation as to sort of how it really starts to get rolled out. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
See you soon. Yeah.